hardworking waitress doing her best to serve customers is suddenly fired for helping NBA superstar Steph Curry. What seemed like a simple act of kindness quickly turned into a devastating setback. But the very next day, she received a shocking surprise that no one saw coming. Her story went from a heartbreaking moment to an unbelievable twist that left everyone speechless. The unexpected turn of events would change her life forever. Body, a fateful encounter at Sonny's Diner. Amara had always loved the rhythm of Sonny's Diner. At 29, her warm smile and friendly demeanor made every customer feel at ease. The small town of Berkeley, with its close-knit community, had embraced the diner as a home away from home. Regulars filled the booths, enjoying their favorite pies and coffee, swapping stories about the old days, and catching a game on the TV. For Amara, the diner was more than a job. It was a sanctuary, a place where she knew everyone by name, and they knew her. Evening shifts were predictable, comfortable, and peaceful, but tonight, that calm was about to be shattered. The bell above the door jingled, a familiar sound that marked the arrival of another customer. Amara glanced up, expecting a regular, but froze when she saw who had walked in. Standing just inside the door was Steph Curry, the basketball legend. He was dressed casually in a hoodie and sneakers, his unassuming look at odds with his iconic fame. Even without a crowd of fans, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The regulars at the counter turned their heads, whispering to one another, trying to confirm if it was truly him. Amara's heart skipped a beat. Seeing him on the court was one thing, but seeing him in her diner was entirely different. For a moment, the chatter and clinking of plates faded into the background, and the only thing in focus was the man standing in front of her. But, ever the professional, Amara quickly regained her composure. This was still just another customer, no matter how extraordinary. She smiled and walked over to his table. His warm smile immediately put her at ease. There was an air of kindness about him that she hadn't expected, even in such a simple exchange. He ordered a black coffee and a slice of pie, and Amara, still in disbelief, made her way to the counter. The low hum of excitement filled the room. The regulars, clearly recognizing him, couldn't contain their whispers. Amara, caught in the surrealness of the moment, realized she was serving coffee to one of the world's greatest basketball players in her small-town diner. It felt almost unreal. She returned with his coffee and pie, trying to maintain normalcy. Setting the cup and plate in front of him, she hoped to keep the moment professional. As he took a deep breath and gazed out the window, Amara watched for a moment. Despite his celebrity status, there was something grounded about him. Calm, humble, a little tired, perhaps, but radiating warmth and kindness. She admired not just his skills on the court, but his character. His fame hadn't changed him. Just as Amara was about to head back to the kitchen, Earl, a longtime regular known for his blunt nature, approached Steph's table. Earl had no filter, especially when it came to basketball, and tonight it seemed he was determined to ask the questions on his mind. Earl's words were sharp as he confronted Steph about his wealth and philanthropic efforts. He was blunt in his critique, questioning Steph's actions with his money. Yet, Steph remained calm, his unshaken smile giving no hint of frustration. He seemed to take the questioning in stride, contrasting the tension that had begun to form in the air. The room fell silent, with everyone watching the exchange. Amara, standing nearby, felt a mixture of unease and admiration. She had always known the diner was a place for the unexpected, but never could she have imagined a moment like this. Steph Curry, a global icon, quietly holding his ground in her small diner, and the conversation quickly turns into a confrontation over his generosity. The juxtaposition of the two men, one an icon, the other a local with no hesitation to speak his mind, was surreal in its own right. The tension in the diner thickened. Amara froze for a moment, her pulse quickening as she glanced between Earl and Steph. It was a harsh accusation, one that felt deeply unfair. She knew Steph had given back in so many ways, but Earl wasn't finished. Earl's words hung heavily as he criticized Steph, accusing him of being more concerned with his image than his actions. The diner's atmosphere shifted instantly. Some customers agreed with Earl's harsh words, while others remained silent, unsure how to respond. Amara, standing nearby, felt her hands tighten around the edge of the table. She had always respected Steph, not just for his basketball skills, but for his genuine charitable work and his dedication to improving communities. Earl's accusation stung deeply. Not only was it wrong, but it also seemed unfair, especially coming from someone who had likely never witnessed Steph's true efforts firsthand. The weight of the moment settled over Amara. She had spent enough time in the diner to understand how quickly people passed judgment, particularly on public figures. But she knew that Steph's actions spoke volumes. His charitable work, funding educational programs, building basketball courts in underserved neighborhoods, and supporting various causes, could not be reduced to mere media portrayals. Steph wasn't just a basketball star, he was a man who used his platform for good. Amara took a deep breath, feeling the need to speak out. Stepping forward, she could feel the eyes of the diner on her. Her voice was steady and calm, but it carried a conviction that made the room fall silent. She knew this was more than just defending Steph. It was about standing up for what was right. She expressed her belief that Steph's efforts were about more than what appeared in the media. He had done far more for communities than most people knew. The room grew quiet as Amara spoke. Her words were measured, but they carried weight. She described some of Steph's accomplishments, from funding programs for kids to providing resources for disadvantaged communities. There was no hiding the good he had done, no matter how much some people may try to tear it down. For a moment, the silence lingered, and the hum of conversation in the diner grew louder, though it was different now, warmer, more supportive. Earl, still silent, seemed to reconsider his words, though he didn't offer an apology. Instead, he turned and walked back to his seat. Amara returned to Steph's table, her heart still racing. He looked up at her, a soft smile on his face, and for a moment, their eyes met with a quiet understanding. His gratitude was unspoken, but it was clear. That simple act of courage, standing up for what was right in the face of unfair criticism, had shifted something in the room. The atmosphere in the diner had changed subtly but powerfully. The air felt lighter, and the customers felt a new warmth, as if the small community had just tilted a little more toward kindness. Amara couldn't stay silent when Earl tore down someone she admired, but her defense of Steph Curry had unexpected consequences. When doing the right thing leads to a confrontation at work, Amara must decide if it's worth the cost. Will standing up for what's right cost her more than she expected? Standing up for Steph. Summoning her courage, Amara stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Earl's words had stung, and she couldn't stand by while he attacked someone she admired. She addressed him directly, explaining how Steph Curry had done more than most people could ever dream of, from funding scholarships for students who couldn't afford college to supporting disaster relief efforts and mental health programs. Steph had repeatedly proven that his actions spoke louder than his fame. The room fell silent as Amara's words lingered in the air, and all eyes turned toward her. Earl's expression shifted into skepticism, questioning whether Amara truly believed in what she was saying or if it was merely an act. But Amara didn't waver. She calmly explained that she knew firsthand the positive impact Steph's foundation had on people's lives. Steph didn't have to offer help, but chose to because he genuinely cared about making a difference. Amara's gaze met Steph's as she spoke, and for a brief moment, she saw a flicker of surprise and gratitude in his eyes. That simple exchange made her feel more empowered, and she pressed on, emphasizing that in a world where many wealthy individuals failed to use their influence for good, it wasn't fair to tear down someone who did. The energy in the diner shifted as Amara spoke with conviction. The unease over the room seemed to dissipate, replaced with a charged atmosphere. Some patrons were moved by her words while others remained unconvinced. Earl, his challenge unmet, huffed and muttered under his breath as he turned back to his seat. His stance softened, but his doubts remained unresolved. Amara believed the matter was settled and began to walk away. But just as she was about to return to her work, Mr. Sullivan, the diner's owner, appeared from the kitchen. His face was tight with frustration, and Amara's heart sank as she noticed the look of disappointment in his eyes. He gestured for her to come over, and as she approached, she braced herself for the confrontation she had been dreading. Mr. Sullivan's tone was sharp as he asked what she had been thinking. He reminded her that arguments were not tolerated, especially with regulars like Earl. Amara tried to explain, though her voice wavered with the weight of his words. She wasn't arguing, she explained, but standing up for someone who deserved respect. Yet, Mr. Sullivan's disappointment was unmistakable. He wasn't concerned with right or wrong in this moment, but with business. His reminder that the diner was no place for debates settled heavily on Amara's shoulders. She'd always seen the diner as a safe space, a sanctuary from the world. But tonight, she realized that even the most familiar and comforting environments had their battles. Standing up for what was right, as she had done, sometimes came at a cost. The realization hit her hard. Her actions, as noble as they felt, had consequences that stretched beyond her sense of justice. Amara thought she was doing the right thing, but getting fired and shunned by the people she trusted left her questioning everything. Can she find a way to rebuild? Or has this decision cost her more than she's willing to pay? Let's delve deeper into this. A sudden loss. Earl and the other regulars were the backbone of Sonny's diner. Mr. Sullivan's words echoed in Amara's mind, each one sinking in deeper. If they're upset, we lose their loyalty. I can't have that. The weight of his statement felt like a punch to the gut. Amara wanted to scream, "You're firing me for defending someone?" But the words stuck in her throat. She just stood there, staring at Mr. Sullivan, feeling the finality of his tone as cold as the air around them. He gave her a few days to transition, but those days felt like an eternity. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, each moment dragging her deeper into uncertainty. Tears welled up, but Amara refused to let them fall. She held her head high, determined not to break in front of him. She could feel Steph Curry's presence in the corner of her eye, watching the exchange with regret. Though unspoken, that silent acknowledgement from him settled in her heart, offering a small measure of comfort. As she gathered her things, a quiet thank you lingered in her mind, unspoken but deeply felt. The next morning, the world felt different. The energy she had once felt in the mornings, the excitement of returning to the diner, was gone. Instead, a hollow sadness filled her chest. Sonny's had always been a place of refuge, a safe space where she could escape from the world. The familiar faces and the steady rhythm of the diner had become part of her life. But now, it all seemed distant, as if the warmth of the place had faded overnight. She had been fired for standing up for what was right. The confusion was overwhelming. She had done what she believed to be the right thing, but the humiliation stung. It was like salt on a wound that wouldn't heal. What hurt most, though, was how the regulars looked at her. Their silence was more painful than anything Mr. Sullivan had said. It felt like rejection, like they, too, had turned their backs on her. And in that silence, the question echoed, why does doing the right thing feel so wrong? The weight of reality hit her like a crashing wave. Rent was due, bills were piling up, and she had to face the diner again to collect her final paycheck. The thought of returning filled her with anxiety. She could already feel the judgment in the air, the heavy silence that would meet her as she walked through those doors. But there was no other option. She had no choice but to go. As she stepped out into the crisp San Francisco morning, the city seemed unchanged. The rising sun glowed over everything, but Amara couldn't feel its warmth. The weight in her chest overshadowed the beauty of the day. Still, she reminded herself that I did nothing wrong as she walked through the streets. No matter what awaited her inside Sonny's, she had nothing to be ashamed of. She had spoken the truth when it mattered, even when it was difficult, even when the world seemed to turn against her. And that truth was something no one could take away. After losing everything, Amara's about to gain something bigger than she ever imagined. Steph Curry has a plan. Will she say yes? A surprising visitor. Something caught her eye as Amara approached the diner. A sleek black SUV parked right outside. Its polished surface gleamed under the morning sun, looking completely out of place against the weathered facade of Sonny's diner. Confusion washed over her, and for a moment, she hesitated. What was going on? She pushed the door open, her nerves on edge, unsure of what to expect inside. The usual hum of conversation was absent, replaced by a heavy, almost unnatural silence that filled the air like a thick fog. It made her skin prickle. And then her eyes landed on him, Steph Curry. He sat in one of the booths, relaxed but commanding, exuding an air of quiet confidence that even a baseball cap couldn't mask. His presence filled the room, drawing every eye to him. Behind the counter stood Mr. Sullivan, motionless, a blend of nervousness and confusion evident on his face. The regulars, too, were different, unnervingly subdued. Their eyes flicked between Steph and Amara, the tension in the air palpable, like they were waiting for something to unfold. Amara's heart pounded, but despite the weight of all the eyes on her, she nodded and walked toward him. This moment, this conversation was far more important than anything else happening around her. As Amara sat across from him, she could feel the weight of the moment. Steph's presence was calm but intense, and his gaze was steady and sincere. He seemed lost in his thoughts, no doubt replaying the events of the previous night, her decision to stand up for him when she didn't have to. How he looked at her now, with a deep respect she hadn't expected, made her heart swell with a sense of warmth and gratitude. Amara blinked, trying to absorb everything that had unfolded. She hadn't done anything extraordinary, at least not in her eyes. She had simply acted because it felt like the right thing to do. But the way he regarded her now made her feel as though she had done something truly significant. His admiration was palpable, and it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't anticipated. She was still trying to process the magnitude of the moment, unsure of how to fully grasp it. Why was he here? What did this mean for her? Her mind swirled with confusion, disbelief, and a sense of disbelief. Steph's words, though unspoken, hung in the air between them. He spoke of the expansion of his foundation and the new programs they were launching, initiatives designed to support underprivileged kids, improve access to education, and offer second chances to those in need. They were looking for people who shared their passion and cared about making a difference. Amara's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his unspoken invitation hit her. This was real. The magnitude of what he was offering left her stunned. Her mind scrambled to find the right words, but none came. She could only sit in silence, grappling with the enormity of the decision laid before her. At that moment, everything shifted. What had seemed like a small act of courage the night before had opened the door to something bigger. An opportunity not just to change her own life, but to be part of something that could make a real difference. It wasn't waiting tables anymore. This was an opportunity to use her voice, her heart, and her dedication to helping others in a way she had never imagined. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time in a long while, Amara felt a flicker of hope, a glimmer of possibility, a new beginning. Amara sat in stunned silence, the weight of Steph Curry's offer settling in. Just the day before, she had lost her job, but now an opportunity beyond anything she had ever imagined was being handed to her. The reality of it felt overwhelming. She felt tears welling up but held them back, her emotions a mix of disbelief and gratitude. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance for something meaningful, a way to make a real difference. For the first time in a long while, Amara felt hope. The weight of the past seemed lighter, and she realized this was a new beginning. The diner around her felt quieter than usual. The regulars, once quick to judge, sat in silence, their expressions softening. Mr. Sullivan, too, seemed to regret his earlier actions, but Amara knew there was no need to dwell on it. She had already turned her focus to what lay ahead. As she collected her final paycheck, she realized the lesson she had learned. Standing up for what was right could be difficult, but it also opened new doors. She had done what she believed in, and now she was ready for the future. Stepping into the sunlight, Amara felt its warmth and the promise of a new beginning. She threw herself into her work with Steph Curry's foundation, helping others and finding fulfillment she had never known before. Losing her job had been a setback, but it had led her to a life filled with purpose and passion. If you found this story shocking, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more heartwarming and surprising moments. Stay tuned for more amazing content and let us know what you think in the comments below.